Hello and welcome back to XVD Bibles. My name is Ethan. So today we're going to be continuing my series on how to rebind a Bible from start to finish. And today we're going to start getting into the really fun stuff. At least I think that, in my opinion, I think hot stamping a Bible is probably the coolest part of this whole process. Maybe next to, doing the hubs. So up to this point, we've been following the CSB reference Bible in Navy Horween that I've been working on. But for this video, I'm going to be using a different Bible, or a different cover. So I am planning on blind stamping that Navy Horween Chrome Excel for that other rebind that you've been watching so far. And I think blind stamping is in my opinion, blind stamping is relatively simple. It doesn't take much other than, the proper heat setting and just, working your imprint, deeper and deeper into the leather, however deep you want it to be for your imprint. So blind stamping isn't nearly as difficult as getting like a really high quality hot foil stamp. So I'm going to show you how I do hot foil stamping instead, just because that is more technical and requires more kind of tips and tricks for how to get it, done well. So we're going to be hot stamping this leather here. So what's unique about this is that this is a completely new leather for me. I've never hot stamped this leather before. So you're going to see my unfiltered trial and error for how to figure out how to hot stamp this really well. So, my Kingsley stamping machine here is already heated up, so we can go ahead and get started. And I'm going to try to get the best angle I can of this. I'm going to rotate my camera down and maybe get it from like this angle so you can see the process. But we're going to start with Holy Bible, and I'm not sure yet whether I want to do the process of doing the translation and my branding, because it's once you see one set of hot stamping, you kind of seen it all. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and get started here. So this is a cowhide. This cowhide is called Amazonia from La Perla Azura. It's a completely new leather that I've never used before. So far, it's been relatively easy to work with. It's pretty hard to skive because it's so dry and kind of resists your knife so much. But this should be a good example for everyone out there of how to troubleshoot stamping. So Amazonia is a vegetable tan leather, similar to Battle-Lassie Carlo Waxy, although it's a drier leather. It doesn't have as much hot stuffed oils as Waxy does. So, who knows how well this stamps, but we'll find out. So, got my monitor over here so I can see what we're looking at. So first thing first, you obviously need to preheat your stamping machine. So this has been preheating for a while, so I know that it's at a good point. And actually I already did some test stamps just to make sure that it was well. This is not Amazonia. This is a different leather, but I stamped on this leather a few times just to make sure that my machine is properly preheated. And that's going to be really important for you out there if you're just learning. You don't want to immediately start stamping as soon as your temperature dial is at the proper temperature. You want to wait a good 10 or 15 minutes after that point to make sure that your entire stamping surface is properly normal, the temperature is properly normalized and everything is good to go. And as a rule of thumb too, when you start doing this, anytime you change a stamp, anytime you take out your type holder for any amount of time other than just a couple of seconds, you're going to have to wait to make sure there's not a temperature dip. So what happens is, if I was to take my type holder out here and remove it from the heating source, it's going to immediately start to cool down to room temperature. And if I then put it back in the machine, the whole stamp head here is you're going to see a drop in temperature, and you need to wait for that drop in temperature to occur and for the temperature to start bumping back up to your proper stamping temperature. So anytime you change your your stamps or take out your type holder for any significant amount of time, you're going to need to wait a little bit to make sure everything normalizes. So you really can't wait too long. When I stamp, I might do it on a Saturday or a Sunday, and or late at night, and I'll have my stamping machine on for like hours and hours and hours. I'll be changing out stamps, waiting until it heats back up, etc. So it's a long process, stamping, especially if you're doing a bunch of Bibles at once. If you're doing one Bible, you can stamp Holy Bible one day, then move on to the translation the next day, or do it in the morning, or then in the evening with a lot of time in between. But yeah, so this is I've done an introduction on this machine before. This is a Kingsley M-50. It's a rheostat controlled electric stamping machine, and it's in great condition. I recently, at least not super recently, but last year I replaced the heating element on it myself. And you can see here, I have it set to the dial set to about 5.5 and 6, 5.5 or 6, and it's at a nice stamping temperature right now. And the generic guidance that I give everyone is that 250 degrees is generally the best temperature to start dialing in your best stamping temperature for your foil. You might need a little bit higher, you might need a little bit lower, but 250 is almost always like a good place to start for not only foil stamping, but also sorry about that, I had to step away. But anyway, 250 degrees is generally the best place to start when it comes to figuring out what temperature to stamp your leather. So I'm going to take this out briefly just to show you that I already have my stamp in here. So I use pre-made Holy Bible stamps for my Bibles, and I already have my Holy Bible stamp in here, and I made sure it's nice and straight. So we can go ahead and get started here. Obviously that's really hot, so I don't want to, not trying to burn myself. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's figure out how to stamp Amazonia cowhide together. So I have some scrap pieces of Amazonia here. So let's go ahead and test it out. So this is a nice scrap piece here. And I'm going to go ahead and clamp. So the Kingsley that I have has a little stamp here. Hopefully you can, this little arm right here is actually a clamp that will clamp your project onto your base plate. So let's go ahead and get this clamped in here, and I'm going to try to find a better angle for everyone out there to see what I'm doing here. So we'll go ahead and get this clamped in, and let's try to find a better angle. All right, I think that's maybe the best angle we can hope for here. So let's go ahead and get started with testing out this leather. So I got my test piece here, nice and clamped tight. Not really going to move anywhere. So let's go ahead and get started. So I use for all of my Bibles, for at least the vast majority of them, I use Howard brand foil. And I use their foil specifically designed for stamping leather. And this is what we're going to be testing out today. So this is, Howard imprinting there. And this is model number 19LM. Obviously have a second roll here, but it's going to be the same exact foil. This is a matte gold stamping foil. And depending on what the customer wants, depending on what my customer wants, and depending on what I want to do as far as non-commissioned Bibles, I'll choose between my my metallic gold foil and my matte gold foil. I have some of both. So go ahead and cut a piece here for us. So when you go to foil stamp, there's a bunch of different variables you need to normalize and figure out and play around with. So obviously you need to figure out the best, temperature to use. And I say, 250 degrees is a good place to start for temperature. Hold down is another variable to figure out, and that's like how long to keep your stamping machine pressed in. That's called hold down. And then you also have obviously pressure. So you might figure that 250 degrees with a really short hold down with a lot of pressure, like boom, like really really sharp pressure. That might work for you, or you might do a little bit longer of a hold down with light pressure. So I have found with most leathers, with most leathers, 250 degrees Fahrenheit is the best place to start with trying to figure out and find like your perfect stamping recipe. And as far as hold down and pressure, I do I call it like a firm press. Like you're not putting your entire arm into your press to press it down, but it's like just a firm press quickly, kind of like that, with a little bit of pressure is the best way to go for most leathers. And that recipe I know for a fact works excellently on Battalessi Carlo Minerva box, pedaled Minerva. Works really well with Battalessi Carlo waxy as well. One other thing that you might want to consider is whether you want to do a blind stamp first. So sometimes a leather stamps better if you do an initial stamp to get a nice flat imprint before you use foil, and then right over top of it, hit it with foil. That works sometimes better than not doing that, but it just depends on your leather, and you're going to have to figure it out. But here, this is a nice piece of La Perla Azzurra cowhide, and we're going to figure out how to stamp this together. This is just a little blunt tool that I use to kind of keep my foil pressed in here. So we'll go ahead and figure out how to do this together. So my thermometer still looks good, and we'll do our first stamp. So I'm going to do firm pressure with a really short hold down and see how that works. Ready, set, go. So we'll see how that looks. All right, that looks pretty clean to me. Looks pretty clean. I'm going to move this. Let's see. Nice and clean. There's no bleed. Looks really clean to me. So I think this leather will be pretty easy to stamp. So as far as how to troubleshoot, this is obviously a really good result for a first stamp. I am going to want to do a couple more just to make sure I have everything dialed in. I am going to do multiple layers of foil. I usually do like 3 to 4 layers of foil, just all over top of itself. Obviously, you shouldn't move your leather at all between hits of foil. But 3 layers of foil is pretty normal what I do. So the general rule of thumb here, and this is actually written here on my Kingsley machine, funny enough. So if the name if the name blurs around the edges, which means like around your letters, if there's foil on the leather that is outside of the letters, that means you have too much heat hitting your foil. So that's called bleed. And the way you fix that is by either reducing your temperature, reducing your hold down time, or reducing your pressure. Now, obviously, there are three different variables that you will need to like work through. But the first thing that I try to the first thing that I tweak if I'm having something like bleed is the operation of my press. So if I have bleed, I'll try to do a stamp that has less pressure and less hold down. So instead of like one quick firm press, I might do like, I'll just kiss it with the stamp and see how that looks. I generally don't want to like be mucking with my temperature. That's kind of the last thing that I want to, in my experience, like that's the last thing you want to, go mucking around with. So that's what I would do if you have bleed. Now, if you have, if the letters don't stamp well at all, like if the B here has some spaces in the letter that are not being filled with foil, that means you don't have enough heat hitting that section, and you need to potentially increase the heat, potentially increase how firm you're pressing your stamp, and potentially increase how long of a hold down you have. Again, when I go to stamp, I generally don't go mucking around with my temperature. That's the last thing that I try. I will normally I'll generally do like a longer hold down time. So those are really the only two things you'll see when it comes to stamping is fogginess in your font, like, foil not fully filling in, or too much foil being applied. And those are kind of the two things you'll see most often. And those happen for opposite reasons. So too much foil is because of too much heat. Not enough foil is because of not enough heat. So that's how to think about that. So I will say too, if you're using a more inexpensive, maybe more budget-friendly stamping machine, you will have issues with leveling. Now, a Kingsley doesn't have issues with leveling, in my experience. So, if you have like a Zone Sun or a Zone Pack machine that you might have purchased from Amazon, you're going to, if like your letters are like clear on one end and foggy on the other end, that's because you need to level your machine. But a Kingsley doesn't have that issue, which is why like a lot of like the really invested rebinders, they upgrade to a Kingsley because you don't have to worry about that leveling process. So let's go ahead, enough yapping. Let's go ahead and do our next test stamp here. So gonna get my light. So this is actually a little light that's designed for sewing, and I got it off of Amazon, and it's been a game changer. So all right, so since we got a good stamp on that first round, so since we got a good stamp on that first round, I'm going to mimic what I would do on the actual cover. So 3 rounds of foil, and really be aware of the pressure I'm using and really try to do the most clear stamp I possibly can. All right, so put my foil under. So also too, when you buy foil, hopefully you can see that okay. Sometimes you'll see, you can't see that, but there's actually some wrinkles in this foil from the factory. You generally want to avoid those wrinkles, avoid that area of your foil. So let's see. All right, so I'm gonna do 3 hits of foil. Make sure my clamp here is set good. 3 hits of foil with firm pressure, really quick hold down. 1, 2, and 3. All right. All right, that looks pretty great. In my opinion, I'm going to get my sewing light out of. That looks pretty great. I did have to brush a little bit of the foil outside of the letters, but I didn't really have any significant bleed through, and I think I would be really happy with that stamp on my final Bible here. So let's go ahead and prepare to stamp our actual Bible cover. So obviously the first thing you want to do is be aware of which side is up and down on your cover. So at this point, my Bible, already has hubs and everything like that. So it's just a matter of, and I can show you how I do this. I'll actually do this here as I talk, and then I'll put in a picture of it in post-production. That'll be easier to see. But essentially what I do is I use a series of different sizes of masking tape to mask off where I want my stamp, so that I make sure it's centered, make sure it's level, etc. And I have found that is a great way to stamp. All right, so I have my cover all masking taped up, and I'm sorry about my boy. So what I've started doing, I can actually just move my stamping machine over for you to see this. So I have started masking taping off the section of my cover where I want to stamp. And on most leathers, this masking tape won't mar the finish or anything like that. And you can see here that I've made 2 marks on either side here. And that's to make sure my stamp is level. So if you can see here on this stamp, there's obviously a space between Holy and Bible. And when I go to align my cover in my machine, what I do is I look down, kind of like look down this way to make sure the line, the channel in between Holy and Bible lines up with these marks. And if it does, then my cover is level in my stamping machine, and that is a good indication that I'm ready to go. So here I'll get us framed nicely. Geez. All right, so I'm going to double check that is where my Holy Bible stamp needs to go. It is. And here I'm just going to put my cover, lift my clamp arm down. So unfortunately the space that I made with my masking tape here needs to be repositioned. All right, so I just moved my masking tape over a little bit, and this should work well. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to set my clamp down, make sure my cover is nice and straight, at least as straight as I can get it. think that looks pretty good. All right, let's commit. First hit looks pretty good. Gonna try to get you closer. So when you do this, you obviously don't want to jar your cover loose, and you need to make sure that it doesn't move at all. Let's do one more. Try to get it a little bit deeper too. All right. That looks pretty good. Oh yeah, I'm very happy with that result. Yeah, that looks great. All right, so let's see what we got. So this is, again, Amazonia La Perla Azura cowhide. The color is brown or marrone, and this is the first time I've stamped a cover with this leather before, so it's completely new to me. So this is what we were able to get today. I'm really happy with that. It's nice and straight. Nice and straight, and some nice clean foil application, and it's also nice and deep as well. So you definitely want to add some pressure in there when you go to actuate your handle. Make sure your machine is nice and warmed up, etc. So I will kind of like sometimes rub my fingers over the stamping a little bit to jar any like loose foil around the edges. But yeah, I'm really happy with that result. And I think, my customer, whoever buys this Bible, will be happy with it as well. So again, this is how to do hot foil stamping on a Bible rebind. Thank you for watching. This is Ethan from M-50 Bibles.